So this is part 2 of our book review, Autobiography of a Yogi. Are you ready to go again?
Oh yeah, here we go.
All right. Do reincarnated lives move forward from previous lives? So are you always moving forward or can you go backwards?
The idea that you would be reincarnated is to transfer information from the past to the present.
Okay.
One of the laws of physics, science, says that inverse proportion law. The greater the distance, the less the energy.
Okay.
It's kind of like sunlight, right? So, so when you look at that, let's say I left this lifetime, and then I reappeared at another point in time. Remember those aspects?
Mm-hmm.
The key doesn't fit.
Okay.
So you're going to be molded into whatever way you can express it. Think about, let's say you died in 1600 speaking Old English, and then you pop back in here in the 2000 something, and you're trying to speak English. I mean, it's like now you're molded into the circumstances, and because of that, you're not able to remember or express yourself in the ways you did before.
Okay.
There may be what we call resonant memories that are floating around in the universe. Remember that memory stream?
Mm-hmm.
And you may be able to attach to them or reconnect to them. But for the most part, in my research, is they're irrelevant.
Okay.
And so that all the people that talk about reincarnation is basically irrelevant because it no longer has uh, interactiveness
Okay.
with this reality that
Okay.
has been removed by 10 years, 50 years, 100 years, whatever. Now, I had a lady brought a child to me, and he was 4 or 5 years old, and he could name where he lived and the streets and the people and everything.
Uh-huh.
And she goes, "He's scaring me." And I said, "Take him to Arkansas, to that little town, and see." He could walk down, he'd drive down the street and name everybody, everything, right? So he
Wow.
was still connected to those memories.
Uh-huh.
But probably 5 or 10 years later, the answer is no, it's gone. Why?
Yeah.
It has no more relevance, right?
Okay.
So, and so there's a lot of misconceptions there, and a lot of what I call ooh wah, ooh wow, you were
Yeah.
Cleopatra,
Yeah.
or King Tut or somebody, and what difference does that make? That's the language we use.
Okay.
Right.
Because reincarnation is a big theme in this book.
Yes, and it was a way that they were trying to find continuity in what goes on in the universe.
Okay.
It's more of a something they latched onto because the inability to do that implies finiteness,
Okay.
right? So all reincarnation um, is to try to maintain a constant consciousness throughout time.
Okay.
And basically that's not possible except for some very highly advanced people that wall themselves in a cave, and all they can do is drift on what we call the currents of the universe.
But isn't that the goal of life? Is to hit that level of enlightenment? Or is that
No,
not the goal?
no.
Okay.
The goal of life is to remain alive. That's it.
Okay.
At a very, all these people, oh, you need a purpose, stay alive, right? The reason being in a non-alive state, and there's language for that, is that the process of bringing any kind of substance to your thoughts is very low.
Okay.
So let's say you passed away, you cannot bring any kind of physical interactions to it.
Okay.
So in yoga, and you're learning to interact in that way. You're learning to interact without a physical. That's what happens. When you turn inward, the physical no longer is part of the process. So,
Okay.
so when you turn inward like that, you're developing these other processes Now, you can continue those processes after you die, but they don't have any physicality to them. There's no quote unquote reality to them. There's no expression of them. And then we go, well, sometimes people show up in your living room. You know, I think they
Yeah.
mentioned that. And sometimes people ask me, well, what kind of education you have or lineage? And I go, well, White Eagle used to show up and spend an hour or two with me, and Little Crow, and these are like not apparitions, but I mean, you're looking at them and interacting with them and talking with them. And to be able to do that doesn't require you kind of like learn something. It's more that surrender process of, oh, there you are, and here, let's start the conversation.
Yes.
So you can have interactiveness with other people or presences or consciousness. We call them non-embodied.
Uh-huh.
And so that's what happens with like Babaji and all these other gurus they
Yes.
want to talk about, is that they maintain a database that is accessible,
Okay.
right, for people that want to access it.
Okay.
Very popular in the 70s, Babaji, I think, and then not so much anymore.
Yeah,
So-
Babaji was very big in this book.
Yeah, but just remember, there's probably 5,000 gods on the planet right now. There's probably been 500,000 or more, and nobody talks about the 495,000 that went before this time,
Yeah.
right? But
yeah.
they had a presence. They had something you could tap into. And because it was interactive, that conscious could interact with yours, right? Or that entity. We have all the language goes crazy now.
Mhm.
So, okay.
So, if just surviving is the point of life, then what's the point of enlightenment?
There is a basic, you can call it gift or flaw, and it's one of curiosity.
Can you explain that a little bit
Yes.
more?
Curiosity leads to expansion.
Uh-huh.
It's not elevation, it's not ascension, it's not enlightenment.
Okay.
It's the expansion of your own perception. We'll just call it your own information field.
Okay.
So if you expand your information field to include all the stuff that is available through yoga, martial arts, all kinds of disciplines, historically some of them were religious, by the way, but then there's a greater sense of self.
Okay.
Okay? The greater sense of self is not ego generated, like
Okay.
people have. So a lot of people that get into all this is all ego generated. Look at me, I'm a yogi. Look at me, I'm a guru. Look at me, blah, blah, blah. But the more you expand, the more you're curious about what all and how all things go on, you develop yourself to a expansive degree, not necessarily a higher degree. So we take out hierarchical advancement out of the equation and
Okay.
just say, I'm more Randy, I'm more Lindsey, okay? And the moreness of it includes, let's say, all these books that are in here.
Mm-hmm.
They represent data, remember, my information field, and then the energy I have for it, like the enthusiasm, the curiosity, makes me more present, makes me more interactive.
Okay.
And those are highly desirable goals, that I would be more present with whoever I'm
Okay.
with whatever I'm doing. So those become skill sets. And then as I become more expansive than that, I have more to offer,
Mm-hmm.
right? Not more to take.
Okay.
And that becomes a defining thing of as you advance in this stuff, you don't take so much as you give.
Okay. So what's the point of reincarnation?
There is no point. It's a bad language. But if you take reincarnation, let's say, as a continuum of existence,
Mm-hmm.
that's the underlying basis. You say, well, it's a continuum of existence from this point, and then you say, well, that continuum of existence goes in and out of physical reality. Well, why does it do that? You didn't invent it. It goes on without you. It's apparently an outside problem or force or information set or program or function of the universe that you do this,
Okay.
that you go in and out of lifetime. That's reincarnation. And then people come along and say, well, you need to stop that. If it's a basic underlying function of the universe that you incarnate and then reincarnate and keep on this why would you want to stop it?
Okay.
And then they say, well, to stop the suffering. Well, the only suffering you can experience is thinking about it.
Okay.
Because all humans experience the same lifetime.
Okay.
And that's a whole subject we could get into. But so something that causes you to suffer doesn't cause somebody else to suffer. It's not universal. But we could say it is universal and an underlying function of the universe that your consciousness becomes present at different times throughout the universe. That's it. So there's no reason to try to control it, to try to control reincarnation through opting out, through I'm not going to do that anymore, or get me out of here. It's like you don't have that much ability and technique to do that. Most people don't. There may have been people in the past. I'm not aware of any right now. So you don't have the ability to alter a major function of the universe by saying, I don't want to be here, or I don't want to reincarnate no more. So the best language is say, bring it on. Give me another one. Okay? That is absolutely the best attitude because it takes you out of the idea of suffering in this lifetime. It's like, woohoo, we get to go again. It's like a board game. Like, reshuffle. Let's go again. I lost that one. I won that one. That's inherent in human consciousness. It's like this idea that I won or lost. No, you had the experience of lifetime. You didn't win or lose. Okay? So it's why they say it takes time between lifetimes to get rid of all that I won, I lost, I suffered. And once that is moved out of the way, dissipated, no longer produce an emotional response in you, then you can come and reincarnate and here we go again.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. So you have to kind of go back to oneness and then you can start fresh.
There was a great saint, I think her name was Britney Spears. Do that to me one more time. Go ahead. Leave that in there.
Why do yogis in this book refuse to wear animal products but eat sweet meats? We see this when Yogananda and his friends try to run away from the Himalayas.
The evolvement, kind of like the more you become educated, only we're going to call it evolvement, the more your awareness increases. That's why Kundalini Yoga is yoga of awareness.
Okay.
Expansion of awareness through curiosity is how you come to all this. So when you do that, you may come to a point where you recognize, remember the talisman? You recognize the energy that is present or the information is present in that animal or in that plant or in anything else.
Yeah.
So it's very highly evolved to get to that point, but you basically also become inactive, meaning you no longer wish to interact with things, people, places, and things. And so that leads to one of being in a monastery or locked in a cave or whatever, is that withdrawal. And, whoever created this universe, I think, wants you to be involved.
Oh, okay.
Right? It's not something to run away from, my opinion. It's something that, out of curiosity, you can develop skill sets, you can develop interest, and you can pursue life in that manner as opposed to one of withdrawal.
Okay. That's really interesting.
Yeah. Drugs and alcohol represent withdrawal.
Ah, okay.
Okay. Also, what we call limited mindsets, science, religion, there's bunches of them.
Yes.
Is actually to withdraw from the completeness of the universe. So.
Okay.
So.
The sage who had his arm nearly removed by an axe was able to insert it back and stop the bleeding, citing that the Divine Mother was taking care of him. How was he able to achieve such a miracle?
The Bon Po were not necessarily corporal, meaning physical beings. It was a historic, a story that they went in and out of physicality. Okay, if you go to Qigong, Qigong, some of those are representative of interactiveness at the physical that are beyond the understanding of most science.
Okay.
Because they're not a science, they're a practice that you develop. They're a capacity. So when you look at that, the capacity to be interactive at a physical, at that level, requires consciousness and energy, not necessarily information.
Okay.
Because you're drawing from the universe, not from yourself. So we'd say, like a doctor says, I know this. And a Qigong or Qigong practitioner, doctor, would say, I'm open to knowing how to do this.
Okay.
Right? Or what to do, or what to prescribe. Not because of what I know, but because of what I'm open to. There's a big difference there. Difference to what I do and what a doctor does. So,
Interesting. If miracles like the perfume Swami are spiritually useless, why do yogis do them?
I think there's a little book out called Siddhis, Siddi.
Okay.
And one of the things about when you're doing this kind of work of trying to help yourself is there's really not any road signs. So what they did was list the kind of talents you would develop. And so remote viewing is a talent or a siddhi. Healing people is a siddhi, right? Because healing people is just manipulating energy. So the book, The Siddhis, tells you these are things that you don't need to be doing.
Okay.
So it's and of course it's like, don't mess with the weather, so let me mess with the clouds. And of course, as soon as they list, 8 or 10 of these cities, it's like, hey, let me try this. So healing is a city. It's a mile marker on your development.
Okay.
And so when you hear the stories of loaves of bread or people getting healed or pulling flowers out of the air, those are cities.
Okay.
And the admonishment is to not be engaged with them. In other words, don't get hung up at that point, because all they are is mile markers on your path. In other words, they're not stopping points. A lot of people, I can do this, and they never progress in their development.
Okay.
They just get hung up, is what we call it.
Yogis have less mass, so are able to experience higher states of vibration. Can you explain that?
In quantum physics, we call it kata,
Okay.
which is interesting because kata is also in martial arts. So kata in martial arts is a form.
Okay.
And kata in quantum physics is an expansionary state. So you achieve less form. Think about it. If the physical density of you right now, if I made you 8 foot tall, maintain the same density, you would be less dense.
Okay.
Right. And then we go, well, if you're less dense, where does the density goes? And it goes outward in an expansionary wave, and that's quantum physics.
Okay.
See, quantum physics has given us language that a lot of this stuff could be reinterpreted. And that's one of the things I've been trying to do for 30 years, is reinterpret this in a language that is more accessible and meaningful than the way it was expressed in Sanskrit 1,000 years ago. Because it's just like doing the Old English to English. It's there's more nuance, there's more information density behind each word. So.
Okay.
All right.
Does going back to God mean losing dimensionality?
Um, it's about losing physicality.
Okay.
So now we're back into the intersections.
Mhm.
And remember time and space aspected. So you lose your spatial aspects
Mhm.
when you die.
Okay.
They're gone. And that means that you're basically non-interactive from that point on.
Okay.
Now, in certain conditions and circumstances, that's not true.
Mhm.
We call them ghosts, spirits, entities, on and on and on. So the answer
Okay.
to the question is yes, you lose, but you lose it in a spatial. You do not lose it in a time aspect.
Okay.
Right? And that's something I've been working on trying to explore more. Okay?
Well, let us know when you figure it out.
Okay.
In one of the chapters, Yogananda tells Sri Yukteswar he feels sick, and Sri Yukteswar says he is not, which instantly makes him feel better. Sri Yukteswar tries to show him the body follows what the mind believes. How can people get back to this level of belief so that they can self-heal?
To answer the question, it's called non-participation.
Okay.
It's not that you get sick. It's the fact that you don't get sick for a million other things.
Okay.
So the only way I can explain it is I had a family that came to me and wanted me to work with them. And the funny thing was they did an interview. The son was a student at the university. And he had been there about 2 years. And I don't know why they asked the question. They go, well, you know, you're from Philippines or wherever, Malaysia. What doctors do you go to here? He goes, oh, I don't go to doctor here. And they said, well, why not? He goes, well, we don't get American illnesses. And I thought that was the perfect answer because it's a morphic field. If you get a cold, what's a cold? It's just it's an information field. It's a morphic field.
Okay.
It's a data point. It's
Uh-huh.
an intersection. We're back to all that. And of course the the part was they said, well, what do you do if you don't feel good or whatever? And he goes, oh, I go to Randy. And that was our whole family's response. But it shocked me because it made me realize that all illnesses are local reality.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you having an illness does not mean I have that illness unless I share the consciousness or I connect to it. And if you, and ultimately a cold is, you get a cold, scientists told us it lasts 3 days. Everybody believes it, so at the end of 3 days they quit having a cold. It's like, okay, here we go. 14 days for measles, or 3-day measles, 14 days for chicken pox. I mean, the chicken pox knows time. It knows how to tell time, right? It is absolutely ignorant, right? But the presence of that information and your connection to it becomes very real because you get to experience what that field is telling you.
Okay.
And this goes across the boards for everything from religion, political parties. You get to experience reality in that way, not reality, reality in that way.
Okay.
So that defines all illnesses, right? We don't get sick. How do I know that? We program ourselves,
Okay. Yeah.
right? So, not denial. Denial is different.
Just disconnecting.
Programming is the key to it, okay?
Sri Yukteswar tells Yogananda that the dying vet from diabetes needs to wear an astrological bangle and stay away from meat. He is a diabetic. Why would staying away from meat be part of his diagnosis? We learn that he does not listen and he dies suddenly afterwards.
Okay. Dying is not relational. Dying is something, without being too crazy, is something that happens. Humans tend to look for relational the causality. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Dr. Hawkins says there's no causality. I believe him. Is there correlation? Could be, right? But it's trying to make one finite point of data the source of everything that comes afterwards.
Uh-huh.
So to eat meat, let's say it acidifies the system.
Okay.
Okay. Well, big deal, unless you're genetically inclined to not do well under those circumstances.
Okay.
So we could say any diet is appropriate and any diet is inappropriate at the same time.
Okay.
So, and here we go. You do not eat the foods you ate when you were 1 day old, 1 week old. Whatever you were eating was appropriate. Okay?
Yes.
When you're 80 years old, the food you ate when you were 20 may not be appropriate. Or it may be. See what? So that's why all diets are false. They're appropriate and inappropriate at the same time.
Uh-huh.
It's not either or, it's both and, right? So
The book indicates that diseases is an affliction that can be prevented in life. Does that really hold true? Can every diseased person really be healed, or is there a karmic exchange during one's life?
yes. One of the secrets of all healing and health is that, is it available?
Okay.
So when people say, I want to be healthy, we say, is that available to you?
Okay.
Right. And then now it becomes a process of what foods and what activities. And then it all, but the one underlying issue is the amount of energy you have.
Okay.
If you have an illness, you have an energy deficit at some point. Physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, psychic, psychological, go through the whole thing. And when you start saying, well, it happened at this point, it's not true, because it's a continuum. People got cancer because they, were on a plane that had radioactive material. No, you were weak to begin with, and that was something that you could include in your own state of being.
Okay.
And the person next to you couldn't include that, so they didn't get it.
Okay.
That's why nobody gets the same illness. They get the same information field, and then they process it through the individuality of the person, right? Okay. It's why some people have bad illnesses, somebody have not so bad illnesses.
Uh-huh.
So stages, right?
Okay. Okay.
So.
The book says we are really just light and not mass. And the way to get there is through 1,000,000 lifetimes or through Kriya Yoga. Are there any other shortcuts?
Well, there's a science that has not been really explored or made known to people. And that is that cellular activity produces photons.
Okay.
It's a language we get when we say people are light beings and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
We literally glow in the dark, not just the aliens.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the development of that knowledge that you emit photons is, in the last 30 or 40 years, say science comes up with a way to detect that.
Mm-hmm.
But yogis and people throughout history have said that they had knowledge of that, so that you literally glow. So science says, well, you're like a 100-watt light bulb, but photonic emissions from a baby are off the charts compared to somebody in their 50s or 60s as a rule.
Yeah.
So that science of being able to develop and increase photonic emissions has a lot of potential for healing people, because you literally have more energy than the negative state of an illness is able to overcome and manifest itself.
Okay.
This gets into all that manifestation and you can create reality thing.
Okay.
But so the idea of 1,000,000 lifetimes, meaning it may take you that long to get to a point where you even understand that or know it. You think about like what I just said about, well, humans emit photons as a cellular activity. That's not well known. You couldn't go on a college campus and find one person probably that would know that information. Now, once you know that information, the immediate question, being curious, how do I increase that? So, Kriya Yoga.
Okay.
Kriya Yoga, Kundalini Yoga, is a way to increase photonic emissions through the human body because of the interactiveness increases with the etheric or energy state of the universe in a way that produces a higher energy state.
Okay.
Now, higher, in this case, we take out the hierarchical and just say a expansive or more being a better language. So the more energy you have, the less likely you are to be sick. It doesn't mean the less likely you are to die.
Okay.
Those are different. Okay? So,
how come the yogis were blessed with knowing this, but the knowledge was lost before, like during the Christ times?
it gets into the number of people that are interested.
Okay.
I think there's a quote in there somewhere about you don't really die until the last person has a memory of you has died.
Oh, okay.
All right? So if we think about that and apply it in the same way, the knowledge, the reason I call it secret martial arts is like, man, my teachers when I was younger were in their 60s and 70s, and there weren't very many of them, and there's a whole lot less today. All right, I just found out one of them had passed away recently. So you think about somebody that spent their lifetime to learn this stuff, and then they're no longer available, right? Unless you're a yogi and you can tap out into the field and talk to them. Remember that?
Yeah.
So,
Well, one of the yogis, in the book, it says that if there are 10 Christ-like yogis in a country, the country will never fall. And so you've seen that India has never really fallen.
this gets into Dr. Hawkins' work.
Okay.
It's called offsetting consciousness. So if I am no longer, let's say, a mean person, I'm not pushing the universe in that direction.
Okay.
It's push and pull. It's called Wing Chun as a martial art. Push and pull. Those are the two active directions, we'll call it. In yoga, it's in and out.
Okay.
So outward, as soon as you start yoga, you start inward.
Okay.
So when Dr. Hawkins talks about 1,000-level consciousness, Christ consciousness, he's talking about a consciousness that offsets a whole lot of others that are less than that. So, and so then that becomes an equation or a ratio. And this gets into the history, spiritual history of people that were able to influence more than, say, just their immediate surroundings. And we have that, and we even have language. Nobody would have said that Yogananda was an influencer in 1926 or 1930 or whatever. And yet he was, and his reach was, let's say, 1 million people. That's phenomenal.
Yeah.
And then you take like this book, and how many people, I don't remember how many printings, but how many people have been influenced by it? That's an influencer, whether he's alive or not. So what happens when the last person becomes influenced is that information disappears.
Okay.
It's no longer present. I hold knowledge that other people don't have. You hold knowledge that other people don't have. And so, to me, the purpose of them being curious and alive is to gain knowledge and be able to share it. And that's exactly in the movie Lucy, where Lucy asks the professor, what's the purpose of life? And he goes, well, to share the knowledge you've gained.
Okay.
And that's exactly the reason I do these interviews and stuff. Because it's not that I'm all knowing, even though some people think I am. It's the fact that I'm just sharing the information. Yeah? I'm just sharing the information that I've gained. so that it doesn't disappear,
Yeah.
so that people can take their curiosity and energy in life and move forward. So there. Thank you.
Wow. So how many Christ-like yogis are around right now
Um,
on the planet?
oh, I don't know. I hadn't looked on the planet. Um, Last night I was looking at that question. I think there's 7 in the United States. There's 10 in India, 1 in Russia. I mean, you could just go around. There's probably about 62 of them right now on the whole planet.
Wow.
And that's a
Okay.
field
Okay.
response. That's
Yeah.
just a field answer.
Yeah.
And I'm taking that information from the field.
Uh-huh.
And to let people know you can access any question of the field and get a response, get the truth. So.
Would it make sense for someone to pray to Babaji now? Could he still perform miracles on the living?
No.
Okay.
What you do, remember inside, outside?
Mm-hmm.
If you go within yourself, you might be able to change, like health states, diabetes, everything can be changed internally.
Mm-hmm.
Externally, you're going to an external focus to act as a mirror of your desire.
Okay.
Now, desire rates 150 on a scale of consciousness, and it's not very powerful, we'll say.
Okay.
And so the object of using a mirror, or what I call creating an injunction with another consciousness, even if it's a memory consciousness, a field conscious, is that the response is any response is still going to be yours. It's not theirs.
Okay.
By placing the focus outside of you, we would say the incident response is generally less
Okay.
than if you did it within yourself. If you place it outside of you, that's where we get all kinds of things like gurus, right?
Mm-hmm.
Cults, all manner of stuff, because of the space in between you and them.
Uh-huh.
And that's a whole other topic, so go on.
Maya is also called the devil in this book. How can we eliminate Maya in our lives, and is that even possible?
The language is to turn away from it. This is old language. How do you turn away from Maya? Maya is all in front of you. Remember the sensory? Remember your sense organs? So when you turn inward, you're turning away from Maya.
Okay.
When you go into the field as opposed to your own consciousness, then you are turning away from Maya.
Okay.
You're no longer manipulatable. You're not able to be manipulated by what's going on. You can have thoughts, you can experience what's going on in the world,
Mm-hmm.
but you're not manipulated by it.
Okay.
It's a true definition of freedom. Okay.
How can one really know our belief system is strong enough to self-heal? Are there any identifying factors?
Well, first of all, belief is insufficient.
Okay.
Belief implies the absence of that which you're looking for.
Okay.
So I believe I could be well is different than I know I could be well.
Okay.
So the whole point of yoga and meditation, things like that, is to come into some state of knowingness. And of course, if you get to certain states, they call it divine knowingness, meaning you know everything.
Okay. Yogananda talks about Hatha yoga for intuition. How come this particular yoga heightens intuition, and how does it do that?
Remember how everything's moving in the universe?
Mm-hmm.
That's a sort of a constant.
Mm-hmm.
And if you stop that, if you stop in the flow of time, then you have created I don't even know how to describe it. You've created in water we'd say a knuckle in the water.
Okay.
A turbulent area.
Uh-huh.
And what happens is time doesn't flow properly past that.
Okay.
And so it's not that you come to a stop. You've created an anomaly, something that's not going with the flow, we'll call it. And so in Hatha Yoga, you're doing that. You're taking space, your manipulation of space through your body movements. Now, your body also is an energy field. So here we go again. If you increase the energy, Kundalini Yoga, right? Pranayama. Pranayama is the easiest way to increase energy. And then you apply that to a space. Now you're energizing that little bubble you're creating.
Okay.
And when you do that, then there are outcomes. And one of those can be information coming to you that would normally not be available.
Okay.
And we call it slowing down.
Okay.
That's a slow life down. In the martial arts, you slow your heartbeat, you slow your respiration rate, you slow your literally everything. You can shut it way the heck down. Oh, they do the same thing in yoga.
Yeah.
You can slow it all down to a state of non-animation, we'll call it. And so when you look at those processes, then now you're in an area where the potential for things is different than if you weren't doing those exercises. So you're creating potential for yourself.
Okay.
And it's one of the things that all the gurus out there kind of skip over, is that if you're going to create reality, some sort of bringing the kite to you, then you would have to have some conscious and some energy to do that. And of course, I'm not going to teach you that or tell you that because I don't know how to do that myself. They'll say they do, but it should be very simple, straightforward. The other thing is, you don't need to pay anybody. Hatha Yoga, you can find this everywhere now. You can find the old books even. And the only difference is Kundalini Yoga, Hatha Yoga, all the yogas are experiential. Like the country music song, it's not a thinking thing, right? It's something you have to do. And if you do it over a long period of time, remember holding a thought in mind, then you will change and be different in some way that increases your potential to change and be different. In other words, it becomes a self-loop, and the current term is a self-learning system.
Okay.
And we call that AI.
Ah.
But the proper self-learning system is the human body and human existence. Because we are truly self-learning systems until we stop learning.
Okay.
And so what they're trying to do with AI is the same thing you can do with yourself. And the difference is AI cannot access the field, but a human can. So all knowledge is available to a person. Do your yoga. That's what I would say.
Okay.
And read the book.
Well, that is our book review. Thank you so much for listening and watching us. We will let you know what our next book is. We are open to suggestions, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you so much for being here.
Me too. This is great fun to me.
Me too.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right.